The Vanishing of Mill Creek Ridge. Mill Creek was the kind of town where everyone knew your name and your business. Tucked into the dense woods of the Pacific Northwest, its population barely hit 1,200. Outsiders rarely visited, and the townsfolk liked it that way. But one autumn, Mill Creek became the epicenter of a mystery that haunts its remaining residents to this day. It began with the disappearance of a 17-year-old girl, Claire Hawthorne. She left for her usual evening jog on the forest trail, but never came back. Her parents reported her missing the next morning, and within hours, the entire town was out searching. They found her headphones near a stream and one running shoe half buried in the mud. But of Claire there was no trace. What was unsettling wasn't just her disappearance. It was the fact that similar cases had happened in the town's history. Locals whispered about the Mill Creek vanishings, a string of unsolved disappearances spanning decades. Between 1946 and 1998, 5 people had gone missing in almost identical circumstances. Each time, the trail went cold. The sheriff, Hank Forrester, dismissed the notion of a connection, blaming everything from wild animals to runaway scenarios. But that didn't explain the strange details. Each missing person was last seen on or near the forest trail. Each disappearance happened in the fall, and in every case, no remains were ever found. As the weeks passed without leads, tension gripped the town. Parents kept their children indoors, businesses closed early, and then, 2 weeks after Claire vanished, 23-year-old Jonah Green disappeared while hiking the same trail. This time, a hunter reported hearing a man scream, an unnatural, guttural cry that echoed through the woods. By the time the hunter reached the area, there was no sign of Jonah, only claw-like marks on a nearby tree and the faint smell of decay. Panic set in. Was it a bear, a mountain lion, or something far worse? The breaking point came when the sheriff's deputy, Megan Lane, decided to patrol the trail alone one evening. Determined to prove there was nothing to fear, her patrol car was found the next morning, engine still running. A smear of blood on the driver's side window. No Megan. That was the last straw. Sheriff Forrester, under pressure, called in state investigators. They brought dogs, drones, and forensic teams. Over 3 days, they combed the forest and uncovered a shallow pit filled with bones, human bones. DNA analysis later confirmed they belonged to Claire, Jonah, and at least 3 others dating back decades. But the bones showed no signs of animal attack or decay consistent with natural deaths. Instead, they bore knife-like cuts and scorch marks, as though someone or something had methodically butchered them. The discovery caused an uproar, and the media descended on Mill Creek. Rumors spread of a cult operating in the woods, performing ritual sacrifices. Others believed the disappearances were the work of a serial killer who had been preying on the town for decades. But the most unsettling theory came from a retired lumberjack named Ernie Whitaker. He told reporters about the Whisper Man, a local legend passed down through generations. According to the tale, the Whisper Man was a spirit or demon that lured victims into the forest by mimicking the voice of someone they trusted. Once you followed it into the woods, you were never seen again. Whether by fear or coincidence, the disappearances stopped after the FBI investigation. The forest trail was permanently closed, and many families left Mill Creek for good. To this day, the case remains officially unsolved. No arrests were made, no suspects identified. But those who still live in Mill Creek will tell you one thing: if you hear your name being called from the woods, don't answer. The Shadows of Green Hollow. Green Hollow was a postcard-perfect small town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It had one gas station, a diner where everyone gathered on Sunday mornings, and a church whose bell tolled faithfully at noon. For years, the town prided itself on being safe, welcoming, and untouched by the troubles of the outside world. But that all changed one summer, when Green Hollow became the setting for a chilling and unsolved crime. It started with the disappearance of 14-year-old Emily Carter. She was last seen riding her bike home from the library on a warm June evening. Her parents, Michael and Donna, reported her missing when she didn't return by nightfall. The town sheriff, Tom Lacey, led the search, but all they found was Emily's bike, abandoned on the side of an old dirt road that led into the woods. At first, people thought Emily might have run away, though those who knew her dismissed the idea. She was bright, responsible, and loved her small-town life. Then, 2 weeks later, another child disappeared, 10-year-old Nathan Ellis. He had been playing with friends in a field near the woods, and when they turned around, he was simply gone. The town spiraled into panic. Parents refused to let their kids out of sight. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was a wild animal, others whispered about a kidnapper, or worse, something supernatural. But the scariest part was that there were no clues, no footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing to suggest where Emily or Nathan had gone. Sheriff Lacey enlisted help from state authorities, and search teams combed the woods for miles. They found nothing until late July, when a hiker stumbled upon a small, overgrown clearing deep in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a crude wooden structure, a cabin, long abandoned and rotting. Inside, they found a horrifying scene. The walls were covered in cryptic symbols carved into the wood, the floor strewn with animal bones. In one corner, they found something that made even the most seasoned investigators recoil. A pile of children's shoes, covered in dust, but eerily well preserved. None of them matched Emily or Nathan's descriptions, but they suggested something deeply sinister had taken place there. The cabin became the focal point of the investigation, but it raised more questions than answers. Forensic teams couldn't determine how long the shoes had been there, or if they were connected to the recent disappearances. And while the symbols on the walls appeared to have ties to local folklore, they didn't match any known languages or practices. As summer turned to fall, the disappearances stopped, but the fear remained. Families moved away, businesses shuttered, and Green Hollow became a shell of its former self. The woods, once a place of adventure for the town's children, were now avoided at all costs. A year later, the case took a strange and terrifying turn. Donna Carter, Emily's mother, claimed to have seen her daughter in the woods. She was driving home late one night when she spotted a figure standing just off the road, wearing a blue jacket that looked exactly like Emily's. Donna slammed on the brakes and ran into the woods, calling her daughter's name, but the figure vanished. Other sightings followed. A hunter claimed he saw a boy matching Nathan's description near the old cabin, walking barefoot and staring blankly ahead. A teenager swore she heard children's laughter coming from the woods at dusk. Each time, search teams were dispatched, but they found nothing. The final, chilling detail came from Sheriff Lacey himself. After retiring, he gave an interview to a local reporter and revealed something he had never shared with the public. On the night the cabin was discovered, he had found a small notebook hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were pages filled with childlike drawings, houses, trees, stick figures holding hands. But as the pages went on, the drawings became darker. The last page showed a crude depiction of the cabin, with stick figures standing inside and a tall, shadowy figure looming over them. Sheriff Lacey didn't tell anyone about the notebook, fearing it would only fuel the town's hysteria. But he admitted that he still kept it in his desk drawer, unable to throw it away. When asked what he thought happened to Emily and Nathan, his answer was simple but chilling. Some things can't be explained, but whatever took those kids, it's still out there. Green Hollow remains a ghost town to this day. The woods have reclaimed the old roads, and the cabin has long since collapsed. But those who visit say they still feel uneasy, as though they're being watched. And sometimes, if the wind is just right, they swear they can hear the faint sound of children laughing, echoing through the trees. The Disappearance of Lily Harper. Deep in the heart of the Midwest, the town of Ashford sat quietly between sprawling cornfields and dense forests. It was a town where everyone knew everyone, where doors were left unlocked, and where the biggest excitement came from the annual Harvest Festival. That was until the autumn of 1987, when 16-year-old Lily Harper disappeared. Lily was well loved in Ashford. She worked part-time at the local diner, sang in the church choir, and was known for her quick wit and kind heart. On the evening of October 3rd, she left her shift at the diner to walk home, a route she'd taken countless times. But this time, she never made it. Her parents called the sheriff, Jim Rogers, when she didn't return by 10 p.m. He organized a search party, and half the town joined in, scouring the roads, fields, and nearby woods with flashlights and dogs. The only thing they found was her scarf, snagged on a tree branch at the edge of the forest. At first, everyone assumed it was a kidnapping. The state police got involved, and missing person posters were plastered everywhere. But days turned into weeks, and no trace of Lily emerged. That's when the rumors began. Some townsfolk whispered that the forest, called Whispering Pines, was cursed. For decades, people had reported hearing strange noises, soft whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, shadows moving between the trees when no one was there. Few ventured deep into the woods, and those who did often spoke of a profound unease, as if they were being watched. Sheriff Rogers dismissed the stories as superstition, but privately he couldn't ignore one troubling fact. Lily wasn't the first person to vanish near Whispering Pines. Over the last 50 years, at least 6 others had disappeared, under mysterious circumstances, though their cases had gone cold. 3 weeks after Lily vanished, a hunter named Joe Matthews stumbled out of the forest, pale and trembling. He'd been tracking deer near the old Miller Creek. When he claimed he saw Lily, she was just standing there, he said, his voice shaking. Her back was to me, but I'd recognize that blonde hair anywhere. When he called out to her, she didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked deeper into the woods, disappearing into the shadows. Joe swore he followed her for at least a mile before losing her trail. There was something wrong, he added. The way she moved, it wasn't normal. Like she was gliding, not walking. The sheriff led another search party into the forest, this time focusing on Miller Creek. They found no sign of Lily, but they did discover something else. An old, crumbling well hidden beneath a tangle of vines. Inside were scratches etched into the stones as if someone had tried to climb out. The marking sent a chill through the team, but without further evidence, they were forced to leave the site untouched. The case took an even darker turn on Halloween night. A group of teenagers, inspired by the rumors, decided to hold a seance near the well. They claimed they were trying to contact Lily, but what happened that night left them too terrified to talk. All they would say was that they heard whispers coming from the forest, voices that grew louder and more frantic until they fled, abandoning their candles and Ouija board. Over the next few weeks, more sightings were reported. Farmers claimed they saw Lily walking through their fields late at night, her pale figure illuminated by the moonlight. A truck driver swore he nearly hit her on the highway, but when he stopped to look, she was gone. Each account was eerily similar. Lily always seemed distant, her expression blank, her movements unnatural. By December, the town was in a state of panic. Parents kept their children indoors, businesses closed early, and Whispering Pines became a place no one dared to go. But Sheriff Rogers refused to give up. He was determined to find Lily, or at least uncover the truth. On December 21st, the winter solstice, Sheriff Rogers ventured into the forest alone. He carried a flashlight, a radio, and a revolver, though he doubted any of them would be much help. The air was bitterly cold, and the snow muffled his footsteps as he made his way to the well. As he approached, he noticed something strange: the whispers. At first they were faint, like the rustling of leaves, but as he got closer they grew louder, distinct. It wasn't the wind, it was voices, dozens of them, overlapping and echoing, each one pleading, crying, calling for help. When he reached the well, he shone his flashlight down and froze. Staring back at him was Lily. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She reached up, her lips moving silently, as if begging for help. "Lily!" he shouted, lowering a rope. But as he did, her expression changed. Her mouth twisted into a cruel smile, and her eyes darkened. The voices grew deafening, and the sheriff stumbled back, dropping the rope. He swore he saw other faces in the darkness, twisted and desperate, their hands clawing at the stones. He fled the forest and never returned. The sheriff retired a month later, moving to a town several states away. He refused to speak about what he saw, but his silence only fueled the rumors. To this day, Whispering Pines remains abandoned. The forest has grown wild, swallowing the old paths and landmarks. Lily Harper was never found, and her disappearance remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Midwest. But those who dare to venture near the woods often claim to hear whispers, faint and haunting, carried on the wind. And if you listen closely, some say you can still hear Lily's voice calling for help from the shadows.